want to talk about Wall Street, can I? Let's talk about Wall Street. What is Wall Street, when you look at the election, how does Wall Street care right now about what's unfolding before their eyes? 47 Senate right now. We still have 6 Senate seats up for grabs. Democrats lost House seats. How is that possible in this blue wave we were supposed to see? Biden is by all accounts on his road to winning this thing. So why yesterday was the stock market had a spectacular day yesterday? Why? By all accounts, this is their worst nightmare, right? No stimulus. We kept hearing about the nightmare scenario for Wall Street. That if we don't have the Senate is Democrat, then we're not going to get a stimulus through. And that's a nightmare scenario for Wall Street because they know that so many people are going to lose their homes and evictions and so forth. So what actually happened yesterday? Well, the lack of a blue wave actually made Wall Street happy. But here's why. Let's get into the numbers a little bit. And this actually, the reason I'm doing this story is because I want you to think about your own finances right now, your own 401k. And if it's tied to Wall Street, I have some advice for you coming up at the end here. So an outcome would have significantly, we had a blue wave, that would have significantly increased the chances of having a big coronavirus stimulus package, where these big banks on Wall Street, all of these guys would have gotten millions and billions of dollars once again. But we didn't. We didn't have a blue wave, and we don't know how this is going to shake out just yet. So that also scared a lot of the idea of a big blue wave was scaring a lot of the tech stocks. And the reason the NASDAQ is fueled by the big tech companies, right? And they were scared that a Biden presidency and a blue wave in Congress would have put further regulations on big tech companies. Well, it looks like that's not going to happen. Big tech went gangbusters yesterday, according to the data. They were up nearly 4% because they were so happy about basically a log jam in Congress. So they were happy that they wouldn't have to face further regulations. According to Josh Brown of the Reitholtz Wealth Management, stocks had their best post-election day rally ever. A gridlock Congress is not just going to help Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos. It's also going to help healthcare because those healthcare stocks jumped significantly because that means that there's going to be no drug price reforms coming anytime soon. If we have a logjam in Congress, do you think they're going to get through trying to lower prescription drug prices? Again, this is when I look at Wall Street and I just think, this is how out of touch they are with you. Wall Street is excited that you will have to pay more for drugs. Did you hear me? Wall Street went crazy yesterday because now they know they won't have to face lowering drug prices. And tech companies went happy and people invested more in tech companies yesterday because guess what? They're not going to be regulated as much. So when President Trump gets up there and talks about how your 401k under Trump presidency, it's great, it's fantastic. It's because Wall Street is out of step with the American people. If most Americans understood what was actually in their 401k, they would be horrified. Not only at the fees you're paying to other people, but like what are you actually invested in? Like what are your family values? Do you care about the environment? Do you care about prescription drug prices? Do you care about workers' rights? Look at the companies that your 401k is invested in and come back tomorrow and tell me, like, are you happy with that? I know I wasn't. That's why I got rid of my 401k and pulled everything out of the stock market. Uber went up 15%. Lyft got a lift, up 11%. Because they had their own policy win of their own out there in California, Proposition 22. We've been covering that in the newsletter over the past few weeks, protecting their gig economy business model from, basically a crisis. So Uber and Lyft, they're okay for now. They have to change their entire business model. Last time Congress looked similar, when we had this, we could end up with in a Biden win scenario, was in 2001, 2003, when Republican President George Bush was dealt a Republican House and a Democratic Senate, and then a national emergency on top of it. with the dot-com collapse. The Dow dropped 20%, and the NASDAQ lost half of its value. So it looks good right now as these companies are like, driving up the price of their stocks, probably doing more share buybacks and so forth to artificially inflate their stock and make as much profits as they can squeeze out right now on Wall Street. But then in the next few months, look for a disaster. As I've mentioned before, these stocks are highly overvalued. The price to earnings ratio on these companies is awful, and we're facing inflation. You mean to tell me that the stock market is not going to correct itself in the next few months? And we are going to see a huge decline? Look to history. Again, 2001 to 2003 under George W. Bush. Huge decline in the stock market, 20%. So again, your family's future is tied to this. You need to be aware that this is coming and finding out what kind of stocks you're invested in. And if you can position those in a different way or pull them out under the CARES Act, you have before the end of the year under the CARES Act, the ability to pull out up to $100,000 of your 401k under the CARES Act as a hardship because of coronavirus. Get that money out of there. If this were my money, this is what I do. I'm not a financial advisor, but take your money, look yourself in the mirror, see what's right for your family, and pay attention to what's happening on Wall Street. I think we're in for a huge collapse. So repositioning your money into real estate or precious metals, that's what I would be doing. Again, all up to you. Or at least repositioning your stocks into stocks that are growth centric during this extended pandemic, but not tied to this crazy volatility. Because so many of us could end up having our retirement accounts wiped out when this goes sideways. And all of these big businesses on Wall Street that artificially inflated their stocks, they made off like gangbusters because they knew what they were doing, driving these things up like 70% artificially and then selling and moving out as quickly as they can, making all these profits, repositioning themselves while you get screwed. So that's what's happening with the stock market.